What is strategy?
Well, Fiona, Porter's main idea is that strategy is the creation of a unique and valuable position, involving a different set of activities. Strategic position emerges from three distinct sources. 1. Serving few needs of many customers. For example, STP provides fuel additives, oil additives and motor treatments for customers as part of basic car maintenance. 2. Serving broad needs of few customers. For example, NetJet targets corporate customers, provides the service of fractional jet ownership. 3. Serving broad needs of many customers in a narrow market. For example, IMAX Cinemas operates only in major capital cities and offers a big screen 3D experience for customers. I recommend you read Michael Porter's comprehensive article, What is Strategy, in the Harvard Business Review, November 1996.
Thanks, Professor, for explaining Porter's main idea on strategy.
What do these strategy statements all have in common? Well, first of all, none of them are actually strategies. They represent tactics, goals, objectives, and descriptions, but not strategies. They are mere strategic threads, small components of overall strategies. The problem is that in recent years, strategy has become something of a buzzword. Whenever we want to sound smart and demonstrate our business acumen, we just make sure the word strategy shows up in our ideas. The result is that we now refer to many mundane and uninteresting aspects of the business as being strategic, when they are really only small pieces of the overall business strategy. So then, what is a strategy? Being clear about what a strategy is will help us understand more clearly what a strategy is not. Well, the word strategy originally comes from the Greek word strategos, meaning the art of the general. In other words, the origin of strategy comes from the art of war, and specifically the role of the general in a war. In fact, there's a famous treatise entitled The Art of War that is said to have been authored by Sun Tzu, a legendary Chinese general, around the 2nd century BC. Strategists consider The Art of War to be one of the great masterpieces on strategy. In the art of war, the goal is to win. Winning is good and losing is very, very bad. Can you imagine the great Hannibal saying something like, "Our strategy is to beat Rome"? No, Hannibal's goal was to defeat Rome. His strategy was to bring hidden strengths against the weaknesses of his enemy at the point of attack to achieve that goal, such as crossing the Alps when the enemies did not believe he could. The general is responsible for multiple units that must work together to win the battle and the war. The way the general adds value to the battle is by providing high-level orchestration and vision. That is, he can see what the field commanders cannot. Great generals think about the whole, and they work to coordinate all the necessary pieces, even sacrificing some pieces when necessary, in order to ensure that the overall goal is achieved. We sometimes think of business as modern-day war, but the casualties are more frequently investor pocketbooks rather than human lives. The challenge of the executive is similar to the challenge of the ancient general. The modern-day executive needs to develop a set of complex tactics and activities that lead to a victory. So, how do we know what our strategy is? Or, if we do not have a strategy, how do we formulate one? A good strategy provides clear and concise answers to 4 key questions. First, where do we compete? In other words, what competitive arenas or markets will we be active in? We define markets as industries, product markets within those industries, and geographic markets. Second, what unique value do we bring to win in those markets? In other words, why do our customers choose our products and services when they could have chosen the products and services of any competitor out there? Our unique value could be cost or differentiation, which includes image, customization, styling, reliability, etc. Third, what resources and capabilities do we utilize to deliver that value? Do we have exceptional human capital, superior technology, unrivaled network connections, or a unique reputation? Resources generally refer to the things we have in our toolbox. These things can be tangible, such as a diamond mine or an oil field, or they can be intangible, such as a reputation. Capabilities generally refer to the things that we can do, or our ability to use the things in our toolbox. Fourth, how do we sustain our ability to provide that unique value? Are there barriers to imitation? Are there factors that keep our competitors from being willing or able to replicate the value we create for our customers? This last question focuses on understanding what factors allow us to continue to win over time. So one example of a clearly defined strategy comes from IKEA. IKEA sells relatively inexpensive, contemporary Scandinavian-style furniture and home furnishings to primarily young white-collar customers all over the world. By being the first furniture retailer to put stores in every major country, IKEA has greater scale than local competitors. The choice of markets has helped IKEA offer their unique value propositions of inexpensive, fashionable furniture. IKEA sells this furniture in a fun and low-pressure showroom where order fulfillment is usually immediate. IKEA is able to sell inexpensive, stylish furniture because they've developed excellent design capabilities for inexpensive Scandinavian design. But perhaps even more important is the fact that products are designed to be manufactured by suppliers using mass production techniques and then shipped in flat boxes. The flat boxes require that final assembly is done by the final customer, but this dramatically drops shipping costs. Because shipping costs are so low, IKEA's suppliers can manufacture furniture in high volumes and ship it around the globe. The complex interdependence of IKEA's strategy makes it difficult for competitors to imitate because they don't design their own furniture and their suppliers don't manufacture furniture in high volumes and ship in flat boxes. To imitate IKEA, they would have to completely change the way they design, manufacture, and ship their furniture. Note that we learn what IKEA does, but we also learn what IKEA does not do. IKEA does not compete in the high-end furniture business. IKEA does not try to provide high levels of service or customization to customers. IKEA designs most of its furniture, but does not try to manufacture its products. Thus, in addition to clearly articulating why we win with customers, a really good strategy also provides a clear boundary line signaling what we do not do. It is also important to note that what we have discussed briefly over the last few minutes is not in any way intended to be comprehensive, and there are many important perspectives that are excluded. For example, Henry Mintzberg, one of the most well-respected business strategists of our day, would want to emphasize the important differences between an intended strategy, an emergent strategy, and a realized strategy. He would want you to know that sometimes strategy is really more about what you actually do rather than what you intend to do. That is, your real strategy emerges as you do it and may not line up with your plans. Other strategists would not want me to leave out the importance of staging or timing. You may have a great plan, but if you execute the plan with poor timing, it may fall flat. To be successful, you also need to have a well-orchestrated set of timed steps in order to win in the marketplace. In conclusion, since we cannot adequately cover every expert's opinion in just a few minutes, I really want to focus your attention on the 4 questions we discussed before. As you strategically analyze companies and/or develop your own strategies, you need to have compelling answers to these 4 questions. First, where do we compete? Second, what unique value do we bring to the table in those markets? Third, what resources and capabilities do we utilize to deliver that value? And fourth, how do we sustain our ability to provide that unique value? When you have these answers, you will be well on your way to articulating a clear strategy.
Most businesses have a fairly formal process for their annual strategic planning, and most business leaders also recognize that the actual strategic planning process works differently at different levels within the organization. That's because each level within the organization is charged with addressing a different strategic question, and the tools for addressing each of those questions necessarily differ as well. But the key to success lies in using the right tools to address the right question at each level. At the corporate level, the strategic question is, how do we grow? And the strategic options are really rather simple. You can choose to grow through market penetration, market development, product development, or diversification. Ultimately, of course, Every option will lead to a market penetration strategy because once you've chosen to enter a new market or introduce new products, you'll be fighting in a new competitive arena. Choosing the right growth options requires a detailed assessment of your current product portfolio, your current and adjacent markets, and the specific needs of those markets. As you add products or markets to your growth strategy, you may well end up by grouping those into strategic business units. At this point, your business unit managers will be faced with their own strategic question, namely, where should we focus our limited resources? The first step in addressing that question is to evaluate the market segments served by each business and/or the market segments the business wishes to serve. This is a two-step process, requiring an evaluation of the attractiveness of each segment and the business's current ability to compete in each segment. These evaluations should be done by the senior business unit management team and should be based upon explicit criteria pertaining to a market attractiveness and to your current competitiveness. The MVS Market Opportunity Analysis Toolkit provides sample criteria and allows your team to weight the importance of each criterion and to quantify their evaluations across the market segments. After evaluating strategic priorities across the markets you currently serve or wish to serve, you'll need to get very detailed in your analysis of strategic priorities across the range of products and services offered to those markets. Criteria used for this analysis might include your annual sales within each product category for each segment, your estimated or actual market share, the profitability for each product market, and perhaps the competitive intensity. This analysis will enable you to decide where you should focus future investments, such as doing research to better understand the voice of the market in order to achieve the greatest ROI. Having identified your strategic focus on one or more product markets, the nature of the strategic question changes to, how do we compete within this strategic priority? Our experience and research over 20 years has clearly demonstrated that the most effective competitive strategies are those based upon delivering superior value, which raises yet another set of very simple questions. The first of these is, where are we now? What's your current value proposition in each of your targeted product markets? And this requires actually measuring market perspectives of your performance relative to competing alternatives. How do those segments actually define value in terms of the quality-price trade-off? What are the factors most critical to quality and which ones are most important? How do you and your key competitors perform on those factors? And what is your competitive position on the radar screen? Which of your customers are most loyal and why? What are the vulnerabilities of your key competitors and how can you capitalize on those vulnerabilities? These are the questions that your value metrics should be able to answer. Those value metrics should also help you to answer the question, where do we want to go? The analyses from your market research should enable you to identify specific value-adding opportunities and to prioritize those opportunities into a value-based competitive strategy. The MVS data analyses will enable you to identify competitive strengths to be leveraged and will help to prevent spending time and money on internally perceived weaknesses that have little competitive impact in the marketplace. Finally, MVS facilitators will get right down into the weeds with you in identifying the steps necessary to effectively execute your competitive strategy. Our planning templates have been effectively deployed across many industries and in companies both large and small. Based on your business objectives, both financial and strategic, we'll help you to identify the appropriate marketing mix objectives for each value-adding opportunity you've identified, action programs to achieve those marketing mix objectives, along with milestones, responsibilities, and performance measures, and the budget required to implement the action programs. I'll leave you with the following questions. How well have you defined your overall growth strategies in terms of market penetration, market or product development, or diversification? Have you zeroed in on your most strategically important market segments and product or service offerings, and have you collected voice of the market? Do you understand value within those strategic targets better than any of your competitors. If you're not effectively managing your current value proposition, who is? If you'd like help in answering any of these questions, please contact us by email to schedule an introductory conference call. We'll be happy to provide more information about how you might take your strategic planning process to the next level, making it more market-focused, value-driven, and actionable.
There are a lot of strategic tools available for both individuals and organizations, depends on their purposes and in which context they want to position themselves or their businesses. These strategies are not firm or industry dependent. Therefore, it's advised to implement other strategies altogether in business to make it strong and stable. The first one we have is SWOT analysis, that stands for strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This tool helps businesses and individuals understanding their internal and external strengths as well as that in threats. PRES2 tools that stands for political, economic, social, technology, and environment, and legislation factors that might affect our businesses. This tool can be implemented at the first stage in order to understand external factors that might affect our operations. It's especially helpful for companies operating in both domestic and international contexts. Michael Porter 5 Foxes that we also did in our presentation last week. However, let's rehearsal what we did. 5 Foxes including threat of substitute products, power buyers, threat of entrance, and power suppliers. Last but not least, the Michael Porter 3 generic strategies are what we want to focus on today. It depends on what industry we are in, what market scope that we want to achieve, and how unique our products or services are. I will do the course leadership strategies, then I'll pass it to Trúc to do differentiation, and CJ will do the focus strategies. With the cost leadership strategy, this strategy calls for being low-cost producers in an industry for a given level of quality. The cost leadership strategy often targets a broad market. The firm either sells its products or services at average industry prices to earn a higher profit compared to that of their competitors. It can sell its products or services at below the average industry prices to gain more market share. In the event of price war, the firm can also be able to make profit while the competitors are suffering from losses. Every strategy has its own advantages and disadvantages. So to implement this cost leadership strategy, companies require to have some internal strength like capitals to make a significant investment in production, skills, expertise, and efficient distribution channels. Now, I will pass it to Trúc to do the differentiation strategy.
Differentiation strategies essentially means making your business or brand stand out by offering unique features, benefits, products, or service. Differentiation strategies coincide with higher price point than low-cost provider because it costs more money to provide a better overall solution. Now I will show you some advantages and disadvantages of different strategies. In the advantage, with a successful differentiation strategies, company may charge a premium for its products and service. The company is more confident because of a highly developed and strong corporate identity. The company also can pass the higher supplier cost to its customer because of the lack of substitute and alternative products on the market. It also helps business create barrier to entries for other companies, and having loyalty customer following. It helps maintain the firm's revenue and reduce the impact of the market downturn. In the disadvantage, company must face with the imitation. The competitors may copy its business method and steal its customers. The second one is implementing a differentiation strategy is costly, and it may take a long period before a company achieves a strong brand image. During that time, company may face with the risk of changing customer taste or trend. If this situation happens, company may suffer higher costs and lead to a loss. In summary, a differentiation strategies may not be good for every company. It is difficult to maintain a differentiation for indefinite amount of time because of competitions. Now I will pass to CJ to talk about the focus strategies.
Hi everybody, my name is CJ, and today I'll be talking to you about the focus strategy, which is part of the Michael Porter's 3 generic strategies. So this strategy concentrates on a particular niche market, and the generic strategy of focus rests on the choice of a narrow competitive scope within an industry. The focuser selects a segment or group of segments in the industry and tailors its strategy to serving them to the exclusion of others. So this strategy plays the role of something extra, where the strategy is not enough on its own. Therefore, it is broken up into 2 different variants, and they are cost focus and differentiation focus. So cost focus is a combination of the cost strategy with a focus on a niche market, and in cost focus, a firm seeks a cost advantage in its target segment. This is implemented by reducing costs, and it also exploits differences in cost behavior within the consumers. The differentiation focus is a combination of differentiation strategy with focus. It provides a deep understanding of consumer needs, it's innovative, and it exploits differences in needs. So both of these variants of the focus strategy rest on differences between a focuser's target segment and other segments in the industry. The target segments must either have buyers with unusual needs, or else the production and delivery system that best serves the target segment must differ from that of the other industry segments.
Hi everyone, my name is Fung. Thank you for listening to the Generating Strategic Options. Now we're gonna move to the next part, is evaluating the strategic options. Ling and I will introduce you what is evaluating strategic options in the next 2 slides. Thank you. So, there are 5 elements in evaluating strategy. They are consistency, validity, visibility, business risk, and flexibility. Consistency. Strategic alternatives must be consistent with achieving the business vision, mission, and goals. If the vision, mission, and goals are not achievable, then the option will be eliminated. Validity. The assumptions behind the strategic options must be valid. These assumptions may include the future business environment, the competition, the customer, suppliers, and how they will react to the alternative strategies. For example, there's an assumption about competitor lower the prices, but in future there's actually no possibility that competitors may lower their prices. That means the strategy is not valid. Feasibility. A strategy may, in theory, be capable of delivering the business vision, mission and goals, but in practice it must be feasible. In other words, the business must have the financing, resources, access, experience, cultures and skills to carry out. Business risk. Return on investment is related to risk, and all strategy options carry some form of risk. They should also include ways of minimizing the potential risk. The evaluation should aim to determine whether the residual risk of the strategy option is at a level commensurate with the anticipated return. Flexibility. In today's rapidly changing business world, a strategy must have enough flexibility to work if circumstances change. If it can be broken down into a series of options that can be chosen depending on circumstances, this is a considerable advantage. Next, I'm gonna pass it to Lee to start the next slide. Thank you.
Strategic evaluation is the assessment process that provides executives and managers performance information about programs, projects, and activities designed to meet business goals and objectives. The process of strategy evaluation can be broken down into 4 steps. Step 1. Fixing benchmark of performance, which is setting a benchmark performance that best identifies and expresses the special requirements which can then be used for evaluation. Step 2. Measurement of performance, identifying how performance are going to be measured and keeping them consistent. Step 3. Measuring the actual performance and then comparing it with the benchmark in order to see if there may be any variances which must be analyzed in order for them to see if they are on track in meeting their goals. Step 4. Once the deviation in performance is identified, it is essential to plan for a corrective action. If the performance is consistently less than the desired performance, the strategist must carry a detailed analysis of the factors responsible for such performance.
I'd like to talk about how resources in your business can be considered capabilities and eventually defined to be competencies. And this progression is a tremendously important continuum to understand as you define the competitive advantage of your business. And so before you perform an internal audit, which you would do as part of your strategic planning, as part of your SWOT analysis, and an internal audit then would reveal strengths and weaknesses in your business, you want to be able to distinguish your resources from your capabilities and then understand those capabilities which are competencies or distinctive capabilities. So one way to think about this is the resources are what you have, capabilities are what you can do with them, and competencies are those things that you do really, really well that put you ahead of your competition. Alright, so let's take a look at this big picture and how they interact. So resources first are inputs, whereas your capabilities and competencies are derived from those inputs, right? The processes then and people intermix with the inputs in order to create activities that can generate value for your customers and that are difficult to imitate, so they give you that competitive edge. So let's go back to resources for a moment. These are the types of resources you might have, or inputs. You would have financial inputs, physical inputs like real estate, buildings, machinery. You'd have human resources, intangibles like brands, and structural or cultural inputs, which could be the culture of your company, how motivated and driven your people are. Now, when these inputs interact with your people and create processes or regular, predictable, sequential activities. This is what your people get up in the morning to do. They go into work and they perform their tasks. These capabilities are possibilities for a competency. But just like if I was given a basketball and put on a basketball court with basketball hoops, I have all the resources I need. I'm certainly capable. I'm full-bodied, and I have all the normal responses that a body would have, or I should say all the responses you would expect someone to have. And then as competencies, however, I'm not really able to put the ball into the hoop. I don't have good hand-eye coordination, which, as a basketball player, is tremendously important that be a competency, that be something that you are good at. It's something that adds value to your team, and if you're a really good scorer, is difficult to imitate. All right. So in this way, what you have, what you do with it, and what really stands out is that continuum of resources to competencies. Now, I want to use an example from tax season right now. We're being flooded with commercials that talk about tax software. So I'll pick on TurboTax at the moment. They're one of those software brands, but not the only one. And so TurboTax is saying, hey, we have this easy-to-use software that gives you a guarantee that you're going to have the tools you need. And then they say, well, you know a lot. You know a lot about your life. You know if you've moved, gotten a job, had a baby. You've done other things in your life that you've been proud of. So why wouldn't you have the resources and the capability to do your own taxes? Now, H&R Block, however, is trying to convince you that although you have the capability, that doing your own taxes is not a competency. It's not something that you've been highly trained to do, that you're constantly educated to do, and therefore this says money unclaimed when people do their own taxes, $1 billion. So H&R Block is asserting that although you have the resources and the capability, you don't have their competency. And without their competency in training and their employees and their locations and their processes, that you will actually not do as well for yourself as they can. So that's an example of how resources, capabilities, and competencies work in this case in advertising. So what does a competency or a distinctive capabilities look like? And the distinctive capability really needs to be something that allows your company to step ahead, to shine. An example of this is BudNet. And if you're interested in more detailed information, you can look up this website that talks a little bit more about BudNet. But what it is an internal software database that allows BudNet for Anheuser-Busch to collect a tremendous amount of information. They have up-to-the-minute sales info. So as their sales team goes out and looks at all the data, they download receipts from sales, how much shelf space they have. They also take a look at the quality of that merchandising. Is it an end cap? Is there a particular display for a promotion? They look at competitor information, how much shelf space Anheuser-Busch has compared to the others, how much their category has compared to other categories in the store. And all of that gets input via mobile devices into this database that allows Anheuser-Busch to understand consumer tastes and preferences and sales almost to the zip code level, all right? I'm not sure if they look at it to the zip code level, but they certainly could. And by collecting, and it's become progressively more sophisticated, it started out on Excel spreadsheets by the merchandisers themselves and now has turned into something their Salesforce collects with pride, I might add, because it creates a competitive advantage for Anheuser-Busch. They are able to pinpoint promotions and sales, boost lagging sales, take advantage of highly competitive areas to step ahead, and they've really turned their capability to collect data into a competency, so they're very good at doing it. And now they are able, with BudNet and the processes around what they collect in BudNet, Anheuser-Busch has made it into a distinctive capability or competency. At this level, it's very difficult for competitors to duplicate the complexity of information that's collected and the data mining proficiency that Anheuser-Busch has developed.
Once upon a time, a turtle and a rabbit had an argument about who was faster. They decided to settle the argument with a race. The turtle and the rabbit both agreed on a route and started off the race. The rabbit shot ahead and ran briskly for some time. Then, seeing he was far ahead of the turtle, he thought he'd sit under a tree for some time and relax before continuing the race. He sat under the tree and soon fell asleep. The turtle, plodding on, overtook him and soon finished the race, emerging as the undisputed champ. The rabbit woke up and realized that he'd lost the race. The moral of the story is that slow and steady wins the race. This is the version of the story that we've all grown up with. But our version of the story continues. The rabbit was disappointed at losing the race, and he did some thinking. He realized that he'd lost the race only because he had been overconfident, careless, and lax. If he had not taken things for granted, there's no way the turtle could have beaten him. So, he challenged the turtle to another race. The turtle agreed. This time, the rabbit went all out and ran without stopping from start to finish. He won by several miles. The moral of the story? Fast and consistent will always beat the slow and steady. It's good to be slow and steady, but it's better to be fast and reliable. But the story doesn't end here. The turtle did some thinking this time and realized that there's no way he can beat the rabbit in a race the way it was currently formatted. He thought for a while and then challenged the rabbit to another race, but on a slightly different route. The rabbit agreed. The turtle and rabbit started off. In keeping with his self-made commitment to be consistently fast, the rabbit took off and ran at top speed until he came to a broad river. The finishing line was a couple of kilometers on the other side of the river. The rabbit sat there, wondering what to do. In the meantime, the turtle trundled along, got into the river, swam to the opposite bank, continued walking, and finished the race. The moral of the story? First, identify your core competency, and then change the playing field to suit your core competency. The story still hasn't ended. The turtle and rabbit by this time had become pretty good friends, and they did some thinking together. Both realized that the last race could have been run much better. So, the turtle and rabbit decided to do the last race again, but to run as a team this time. They started off, and this time the rabbit carried the turtle till the riverbank. There, the turtle took over and swam across with the rabbit on his back. On the opposite bank, the rabbit again carried the turtle, and they reached the finishing line together. Both the turtle and rabbit felt a greater sense of satisfaction than they'd felt earlier. The moral of the story? It's good to be individually brilliant and to have strong core competencies. But unless you're able to work in a team and harness each other's core competencies, you'll always perform below par, because there will always be situations at which you'll do poorly and someone else does well. Teamwork is mainly about situational leadership, letting the person with the relevant core competency for a situation take leadership. And that is the end of the story.